Welcome to The Week Ahead. My name is Ibrahim Sani. This is a show where we shall explore some of the key details that are currently happening in the country for the next 7 days. We are broadcasting from the All Asia Broadcasting Studio here in Bukit Jalil, Kuala Lumpur, and we are pleased to bring to you the third week of June. Most importantly, let's move on to our first story. The most important thing that we need to focus on is on food prices as well as other inflationary pressures. This is because we are grappling with the rising global commodity prices while our ringgit currency continues to depreciate against major currencies in the world. We are also depreciating quite fast against key economic markets like Singapore and China, where Malaysia ringgit versus Chinese yuan and Malaysia ringgit against SGD, Singapore dollar, is also depreciating, and the gap is widening even faster, resulting in us having to cost more if we import, and because of some exports can't be done, say for instance chickens to Singapore, we're not going to get income from Singapore sale. So those are the kind of ideas that is going to impact how intra-trade G2G government food is going to take place over the next 1 week or so. Now this has resulted in us getting higher import food prices. Will these import food prices affect consumers? The answer is definitely yes, unless we consume food that is being produced domestically, exclusively domestically, which is quite unrealistic if you ask me.
Tokoh kesihatan terkemuka global memberi amaran peningkatan isu kekurangan makanan mungkin mewakili ancaman kesihatan yang sama kepada dunia seperti pandemik COVID-19. Menurut pengarah eksekutif Dana Global untuk memerangi AIDS, tuberkulosis dan malaria, Peter Sands, kenaikan harga makanan dan tenaga sebahagiannya dicetuskan oleh perang di Ukraine boleh meragut jutaan nyawa sama ada secara langsung dan tidak langsung. Katanya kekurangan makanan berfungsi dalam dua cara, iaitu individu yang benar-benar mati kelaparan, manakala keduanya ialah hakikat bilangan individu yang jauh lebih besar kekurangan zat makanan dan itu menjadikan mereka lebih terdedah kepada penyakit sedia ada. Beliau berkata usaha untuk meningkatkan kesiapsiagaan wabak tidak seharusnya membuat kesilapan klasik dengan membimbangkan diri mereka hanya dengan krisis yang menyerupai ancaman terbaru yang dihadapi dunia. Jelasnya, ia tidak ditakrifkan dengan baik seperti beberapa patogen baru yang muncul dengan simptom baru yang tersendiri tetapi ia juga boleh membawa maut. Pertubuhan Kesihatan Sedunia WHO menganggarkan 15 juta orang mungkin telah meninggal dunia akibat COVID-19. Sands berkata pelaburan diperlukan untuk mengukuhkan sistem kesihatan bagi membantu kesediaan menghadapi kesan kekurangan makanan yang merupakan sebahagian daripada tanggungjawab Global Fund. Dana yang berpangkalan di Geneva, Switzerland menyasarkan untuk mengumpul $18 bilion untuk meningkatkan sistem kesihatan, melawan 3 penyakit teras dan mengatasi kemunduran yang disebabkan oleh wabak itu. Ia telah meningkatkan lebih 1/3 daripada sasarannya untuk 2024-2026.
Okay, as you can see, the conversation also revolves on the domestic supply chain, resulting in issues that led to shortages of poultry and other protein sources. Maybe not plant-based protein, but live-based protein is actually quite impactful. And the government enacts an export ban of chicken from June the 1st, 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. And now, whether or not that export ban has actually impacted or actually helped the poultry services or the poultry supply in Malaysia. Not much has been said when it comes to whether or not this actually helped the poultry stocks. So in the next week, we're going to be looking at how this is going to help the poultry stocks be generated even further following the export ban. Based on a conversation that I had with a good Singaporean friend of mine last week, when we both went to Cupertino in the US, he was talking about how Singapore is actually less reliant on Malaysian poultry for quite a bit. They are actually exporting frozen chickens from Brazil for a long time now. In fact, that seems to be the biggest constituent of chicken import for Singapore. They also air fly fresh chicken from Thailand. So when we talk about the Singapore domestic markets, the import of chickens into domestic Singapore is not as previously high as initially thought. So in the Singapore market itself, they're pretty self-sustaining. Prices have crept up a bit domestically in Singapore, but in Malaysia, a lot of poultry farmers lose out because, like I said, one SGD is like 3.5. ringgit. So even if they sell it for 10 Sing dollars, they're going to get 35 ringgit back. So cost of raising the poultry here in Malaysia is paid in ringgit, revenue is made in Sing dollars. There is a big margin to be made. Now that opportunity is lost because of the government ban. Okay, so we don't know how this is going to see the impact on the chicken farmers or poultry farmers in Malaysia if they are basing their business model of exporting the chickens into Singapore, an area that we need to look at even further. Okay, also on cost, the headline inflation right now that has been announced by DOSM as well as Bank Negara is 2.3%. Food inflation announced at 4.1%. Rising food prices do lead to a major contributor to inflation. However, economists tend to argue don't look at food inflation per se at general. Don't even look at the headline inflation rate only. Look at core inflation rate and all the others. However, we are not economists. I am a consumer. When I go to the market, I only look at the things that I buy in my shopping cart. Now, the prices that I put in my shopping cart did not rise 4.1%. I beg to differ because eggs XL, the one that I bought for half a dozen, used to be 6 ringgit, now 8 ringgit. That's a 20%, 25% hike up. Not 4.1%, 25% hike up. Bread, yeah, gardenia price is up, right? And even if I don't buy gardenia, I buy one of those, fancy, sourdough bread, that has gone up quite considerably, right? And the reason, of course, is actually quite simple. There is a carbohydrate crisis globally. Now, springtime is when they plant the wheat seeds in Ukraine and Russia. Unfortunately, because of the war, 30% or up to even 40% of carbohydrate supply is now being cut, largely because they can't grow wheat this year in Russia and Ukraine. Elsewhere, supply has also dwindled because of because of the climate change and because of other geopolitical events or pressure. We're not going to see supply of carbohydrates flooding the market anytime soon. Demand is still there. So what do we see when supply is short and demand is rising, or at least the same? There is a shortfall, and because of that, prices are going up. This does lead to food inflation, at least for carbohydrates. Not rice-based carbohydrates, but wheat-based carbohydrates. And wheat prices, if you just Google right now, take a pause from watching this show and Google it, you're going to see wheat prices actually shooting up quite considerably over the past few months. So commodities are rising, particularly grain-based commodity, and that is not going to stop anytime soon. So within this week, we're going to see how some of the actors of this system are going to address this food shortages as well as agro-based nation as well. Now, Malaysia is food insecure as a nation. We have about 800,000 hectares for agro-food, and yet we cannot feed ourselves. What can be done to address this big problem? Now, we have a few statements coming in from the government, particularly from the agencies and ministries that look at food security. However, being an insecure food nation, even when we have 800,000 hectares of agro-food arable area farm, and we still can't feed ourselves, there has to be a gap that needs to be looked at and addressed. Will this week ahead provide the opportunity for those that are supposed to solve this problem to solve this problem outright? Now, we don't know. We've had a lot of interviews over the past week. My colleagues over at AWANI, my colleagues over at AWANI, Najib Aruf, as well as Achap and Nina, and of course our sister shows in English, Syarat Kutan and Melissa Idris on Consider This, do talk about this as often and as frequent as they could. You can pause this video and watch those kind of interviews there. But generally speaking, nothing is being said and done when it comes to policy level. But on the entrepreneurial level, a lot is being done, right? So these entrepreneurs, particularly in the agro-food, agro-tech sector, they are building solutions and building the required necessary means for the market to consume without the assistance or the support from policy. That's not ideal, but they're trying to solve a problem, largely because their case is being driven by economic promise. So if it makes money for them, they will do it, even if there is no policy. So do keep an eye out for some of the companies that is going to dabble themselves in the agrotech business. Okay, we're going to be covering a lot more for now, but in the coming show that is coming up after the break. But for now, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll discuss about the subsidy rationalization program. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. This is the week ahead. Early on, we were talking about some of the key items that is going to take place when it comes to food security and therefore food insecurity as well. We need to be talking about the cabinet, perhaps finalizing sometime soon the subsidy rationalization program. From fuel subsidy, which Datuk Sri Azmin Ali announced a few weeks ago, that is going to target specifically B40 and help some M40 in terms of fuel subsidy. He has to trim down the 21 billion ringgit subsidy fuel wage or bill that cost the government last year. For contrast, it was 11 billion ringgit the year before that in 2020. This year in 2022, one could easily argue that it's going to cost more than 28 billion ringgit in terms of fuel subsidy bill. So how is it coming along in terms of the mechanism of it? That's the fuel subsidy subsidization program. Now, what about the food subsidization program? Because the government is likely to remain in a populist approach to soften the inflationary impact. We're looking at subsidies to be handed in the form of cash and rebate to the people. Mechanisms have to be clear. We want to ensure that the money and the subsidy is given to the right people. If the B40 is the one that is targeted for it, the B40 needs to get it, not any other actors that doesn't deserve it. Having said that, how is the government going to deliver the kind of rebates, cash handouts and so on, or all the other subsidy programs to these groups? There has to be little to no leakages involved. We are a very crafty folk as a nation. We're going to be able to see loopholes, and that's bad because that doesn't allow for us to actually get the subsidies to the right people. So a lot of mechanism needs to be looked at there as well. Now, we need to also look at income supplementation, whether or not there has to be a talk on universal cash transfers, a hybrid of UBI in a way, universal basic income, and whether or not that is going to be seen in the near term. We don't know yet, for that one. So hopefully in the next week or even in the next 2 weeks, we're going to see a clearer picture from the government when it comes to that. And then, of course, the resurrection of GST or VAT. Still a conversation that needs to be had. If the GST is to be reintroduced, when will it be reintroduced? Always remember the saying from my guest on Notepad many years ago. He was a director of LHDN at that time. He said that any government who introduces GST never survives the ballot box next. So this is peculiar to everyone. Even in Malaysia, Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak lost at the ballot box after introducing GST. However, like I said before this, the loss of Barisan Nasional Government under Najib Razak was multifactorial. It's not just about the GST introduction, it was a bunch of other stuff, including 1MDB. But it doesn't take away the fact that the LHDN officer said on my show many years ago, when a government introduces GST, they don't normally survive, the ballot box. So if this government, Ismail Sabri's government, wants to survive the next ballot box, will he introduce the GST after or before the polls? Most importantly, when, how will the money be used or spent? That's very key moving forward. Now, if the GST is a big no-no in terms of how the populist approach is going to be maintained, is the VAT going to be the next big thing? We don't know, but more talks on this will take place this week, GST or VAT or SST on steroids or any other form of consumption tax. Whatever it is, this is going to dominate the conversations at the Kedai Mamak and Kedai Kopi over the next 1 week. Finally, we take a look into Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference 2022. I went there, to Cupertino, to Apple Park, Apple headquarters, and I witnessed a bunch of stuff there. Here's my clip that if you missed, you can enjoy.
Baru saja selesai mendengar taklimat WWDC sebentar tadi ataupun persidangan pengatur cara sedunia dan ia membawakan beberapa taklimat yang penting dan juga pengumuman yang penting. Seperti mana kita tahu sebelum ini, WWDC setiap tahun diadakan di Ibu Pejabat Apple di Apple Park, Cupertino, California. Untuk memberikan satu pandangan yang lebih jelas kepada mana-mana developers untuk membikinkan software yang terbaru dan terbaik. Dan kali ini tidak ada perbezaan dari segi itu. Namun demikian, tentang pengumuman iPad OS 16, iOS 16, Mac OS 13 yang dinamakan Ventura, dan juga Watch OS 9. Beberapa taklimat penting telah pun diberikan kepada kita. Sebelum kita memulakan dengan isu-isu yang ataupun taklimat yang diberikan oleh iPad OS dan sebagainya, peranti-peranti software macam tu, kita harus sentuh tentang pengumuman yang agak besar pada hari ini, iaitu pengumuman tentang Apple Silicon chip M2. Dan chip M2 ini adalah susulan daripada chip M1 yang dibawakan oleh Apple beberapa tahun lepas. Seperti mana kita tahu, chip M1 merupakan satu produk yang sangat bagus, dan kalau kita pernah pakai mana-mana laptop MacBook yang menggunakan chip M1, kita pun dah tahu macam mana cepatnya ataupun betapa pantasnya chip M1 ini boleh berfungsi serta menggunakan power yang lebih rendah daripada chip-chip yang sebelum ini. Jadi taklimat yang diberikan sebentar tadi adalah di Apple Park sana. Sekarang di belakang saya adalah, ataupun terbaliknya, saya berada di Steve Jobs Theatre. Di sini saya dapat melihat dengan lebih dekat tentang peranti yang dibawakan oleh Apple yang menggunakan chip M2, iaitu MacBook Air 13.6 inci. Dan MacBook Air ini dibekalkan dalam 4 warna. Dan ia menggunakan beberapa fungsi yang terbaru seperti Liquid Retina XDR display, dan juga 2 Thunderbolt, MagSafe charger kembali di dalam MacBook Air kali ini. Dan apabila ia diumumkan dia datang dengan harga $1,200 ataupun by the time kita sampai kat Malaysia dia sekitar dalam 5-6 ribu ringgit. Ini merupakan antara laptop yang terbaru menggunakan chip yang terbaik dan dibekalkan pada harga yang sangat kompetitif. Bukan harga murah, tetapi harga yang kompetitif. Jadi ini memberikan satu gambaran bahawa Apple mahu memenangi market software dan juga hardware, especially hardware di dalam peranti MacBook Air. Selain daripada itu, MacBook Pro 13 inci juga dibekalkan dengan chip M2. Ia datang susulan daripada MacBook Pro 14 inci dan juga 16 inci yang dibekalkan dengan chip M1 Max dan juga M1 Pro. Jadi kalau kita nak pakai M2, MacBook Pro bolehlah pakai, tapi 13 inci sahaja. Namun demikian, disebabkan isu shortage dari segi supply chain shortage dan sebagainya, kita dapat pengumuman daripada Apple bahawa laptop-laptop ini hanya akan dibekalkan di pasaran Amerika Syarikat mulai bulan depan. Jadi kalau kita nak buat unjuran bila laptop-laptop ini akan sampai ke tanah air kita, probably beberapa bulan yang akan datang, sebab biasanya itulah trendnya yang kita dapat lihatkan. Selain daripada itu, dah kita boleh lihat Tim Cook di belakang saya. Mana dia? Itu Tim Cook. Ya, tu dia Tim Cook. Jadi kehadiran Tim Cook di dalam majlis seperti ini memberikan satu gambaran yang lebih menarik, sebab Tim Cook tidak banyak bersuara di dalam persidangan tadi. Yang lebih bersuara adalah Craig Federighi, iaitu seorang eksekutif kanan dan tersohor di syarikat Apple ini. Tim Cook hanya memberikan sepatah kata dua di pembukaan WWDC dan kemudiannya untuk penutup WWDC. Selain daripada itu, Tim Cook juga tidak memberikan gambaran yang lebih jelas tentang apakah peranan beliau terhadap perkembangan yang dibawakan oleh WWDC. Yang lebih bersuara tadi adalah Craig Federighi. Okey, dari segi apa yang saya boleh dapat di WWDC kali ini, my personal opinion, dia sangat penting. Ia merupakan antara WWDC yang terpenting yang saya pernah hadiri sejak kebelakangan ini. Ini merupakan kali keempat, mungkin kali kelima WWDC yang saya pernah hadir, dan antara impaknya dari segi pentingnya beberapa announcement yang dibuat ini merupakan antara announcement yang sangat penting, terutamanya apabila mereka membuat pengumuman berkenaan dengan safety check, iaitu pengumuman untuk membolehkan seseorang wanita jika mengalami domestic violence, beliau boleh menyembunyikan diri daripada agresor beliau. Itu satu. Dua adalah dari segi lock screen untuk iOS, ini membolehkan kita untuk personalize dan juga visualize apa yang kita nakkan di lock screen. Ketiga adalah tentang child safety dan juga family sharing. Kita pun dah tahu banyak kali kalau kita ambil gambar menggunakan iPhone seisi keluarga, bukan selalu kita boleh buat dua benda, iaitu first is jaga dan kawal anak-anak kita dari segi privacy dan juga kebolehan mereka untuk mengakses beberapa aplikasi. Dan kedua adalah tentang sharing pictures kalau kita pergi holiday dan sebagainya. Kalau kita ambil guna phone kita, anak-anak kita dan juga partners kita mungkin tidak mendapatkan gambar tersebut melainkan kita airdrop. Jadi bila kita buat iCloud family sharing, ia membolehkan kita untuk mengurangkan isu-isu ini. Dan dari segi iPad OS sangat-sangat penting dari segi developmentnya, dan juga Mac OS, sebab satu fungsi terbaru untuk membolehkan kita membuat multitasking dengan terbaik, iaitu stage manager, sangat-sangat penting. Dan ini membolehkan kita untuk mendapatkan gambaran yang lebih jelas tentang apakah peranan Apple dan juga role yang mereka boleh bawakan dari segi untuk improvekan kita punya productivity dan juga untuk improvekan kita punya kebolehan untuk leisure. Semua ni dapat memainkan peranan yang lebih mendalam. Tapi kalau kita boleh akhirkan dengan satu perkara, iaitu bagaimana mereka ataupun Apple ingin lock in ekosistem kita, kita boleh guna satu tweet daripada MKBHD yang menyatakan bahawa apabila ada pass lock, iaitu memboleh membuka mana-mana aplikasi password hanya menggunakan telefon kita ataupun hanya menggunakan iPhone, ini adalah antara fungsi yang sangat jelas untuk membolehkan kita terus lock dalam ekosistem Apple. Okey, banyak lagi perkembangan menarik yang boleh dibawakan, tapi buat masa ini adalah antara early thoughts yang saya boleh bawakan. Kembali kepada Najib, Acap dan juga Nina di Bukit Jalil. Saya Ibrahim Sani, laporkan dari San Jose, California, Amerika Syarikat.
Okay, so a lot of things that are currently happening in the tech sector in the week to come. If you are a developer and you want to try out the new iOS 16, Mac OS 13, Apple Watch OS 9, as well as iPad OS 16, and try out the new features, go on and try the developer database. Apple is encouraging all these developers to try out their services there. One more short break. When we come back, we'll discuss a little bit more about the fun thing, which is the Miyazat 3D launch. That's coming up after these messages. Welcome back. So, Malaysia's only satellite company, Miyazat Satellite System, is launching the Miyazat 3D satellite on the 22nd of June at French Guinea. This is going to be an exciting thing because Connect Me Now, the program that is going to be able to give internet to the underconnected and unconnected people of Malaysia. Imagine if you've never gotten internet yet, right? This Connect Me Now program is going to be able to get to these people the internet services that they deserve. It's 2022 and yet some Malaysians are still unconnected. And because of that, the government is taking on this initiative through Miyazat to give internet access to each and every single Malaysian, irrespective of where they are in this country. So in my conversation with the Chief Operating Officer of Miyazat, we were talking about the launch itself and how this is going to be able to help Malaysians get better internet access, or if anything, get internet access bad or good altogether, right, into the hands of their devices. Watch my conversation with the COO, of Miyazat. On 22nd of June, two of my colleagues, Naila as well as Airul, is going to French Guiana to witness the launch. Yao himself is going to witness the launch. I'm pretty sure it's not your first satellite launch. Yeah, it's it's a boring thing for you,
No,
but I'm pretty
it
sure
still
many of
feel
us
exciting,
are
yeah.
actually quite excited.
Yeah.
Talk to us through this launch. First of all, why French
Fresh Guiana.
French Guiana,
So-
and why not, I don't know.
So I think the first thing is that we signed a contract with Airbus to build the satellite, and the rocket or the launcher itself is from Ariane Space. So how it works is that each of the launcher, they have their own we call it the launch site. So for example, SpaceX probably they launch it from Florida, Proton launch it from Baikonur, and Ariane Space they launch it from French Guiana. So in the whole world itself, there's not many launch sites to start out with. So to choose a launch site, it has to be like remote enough, just in case anything happens, it won't hit people.
Oh.
So that is one of the key consideration.
Oh, okay.
So because of our contract is with Ariane, so the launch site will be in the French Guiana, South America. So today the satellite is already delivered at the site, and the engineer are very busy checking all the components to make sure that everything is ready for launch. So we have a couple of engineers based in French Guiana now, work together with the Airbus engineer around the clock to make sure that the satellite ready for launch on the 22nd June this month. And we are very excited about it, and at the same time also feel a bit nervous because launching a satellite is a very risky event. The launching itself is take only about like 40 minutes to complete the whole process. But during this whole process itself, it is really
Nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
How much does it cost to send a satellite to space?
As I say, the whole project cost is about 300 million US, about 1.2 billion ringgit.
All right. So the full-length interview can be seen on my show, Notepad. You can watch that on astroawani.com, as well as all the other social sites that we host our videos on. Until then, that's all from me for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and I bid you a very good week ahead.